Alright, time for a breakdown. So, this is the breakdown for my Late Night Snack Volume 2. So I made an animation earlier this year with this Wendigo that I had, and I've learned a bunch since. So I decided to make a sequel and raise the bar just a little bit. The idea came to me when I was browsing my Instagram, of all things, and I found this video about this man getting dragged by something, and I thought it was like so horrifying, and I just, I kind of like took that, and then I came up with this idea that he wakes up in a cave, and then he finds his shotgun, and well, you know how it goes. So I had my idea, and now it was time to animate, and that's what I did. I started blocking everything out, very sloppy animation. By this stage, you don't worry about props or the monster's animation. Day 2 looked a lot better. I had blocked out the entire cave with cubes, just duplicated all around. And I put some 3D scans that I got off of Quixel. And I found this shotgun model on Sketchfab. And this hand laying next to the shotgun is something that I had made earlier for another project. And the same goes for the head and the leg the monster was chewing on. And here's a better look at the cave that I blocked out and the final result, which looks like this. It's nothing amazing, but it works. Here's a little tip on how to make a cave. Use edit mode and have it selected. Hit Shift D and duplicate it around and then rotate it. You know, stretch it, pull it, do whatever you want. And when you have your little block out done, apply the scale, go into sculpt mode, and then use remesh. Now our cubes are fused together, and now you could use like a clay brush and then sculpt away, make it look like a rock, a cave. Animation is tough, and when you're animating something and it's off camera, then don't animate it at all. Yeah, look at that. That looks silly as hell. But that's what I'm saying. If it's off camera, why bother? But I will say this, if you are lighting the character from behind, you gotta be careful with his shadow. You don't want to see a T-posing shadow, that's just gonna ruin everything. I have multiple animations that I've done, and I'm combining it with the NLA. If you don't know much about the NLA editor, I highly recommend you go checking that out. Now watching this from this perspective, this looks really dumb. So if you're doing stuff for video games, you kind of have to do it right. And I don't know why I felt compelled to do this, but I actually animated like this tiny little rock. And this rock right here. Keep in mind, this is all keyframe animation. No dynamics, no nothing like that. Had it been up to me, I would have simulated millions of tiny little stones and gravel. But you can't really do that in Blender, at least not very well. Maybe the Houdini. The mist, or the ground fog, was rendered right in Embergen, and then exported out, and then composited in using the mist pass. You can barely see it in the final render, but it was there, and it was there to be subtle. And I did the same thing for the Wendigo, the creature. So what I did is I brought the model in Embergen, with all its animation. I made the monster emit the smoke, and then I would composite it in to look like steam coming off the monster. But there's a big problem rendering in Embergen. The model didn't come in with its hair, so he was bald. So when you do render it out from Embergen and you use the monster as a holdout, it doesn't align when you composite it together because the fur wasn't there in the render. If you, in the future, would like to avoid this problem that I had, I suggest export the entire simulation as a VDB, bring it into Blender, and lay it all over your model. And then use that model as a holdout when you render it out. But you're probably thinking to yourself, why would I do that? Why not render everything out of Blender? Well, I'm glad you asked. If you're doing semi-transparent smoke and you have that in your final render, you have no control at all. And when you're compositing, you want to be in control. You want to be able to dial some effects back, dial the opacity, the strength. You know, that's why you want to have it separate. And oh boy, I had another problem. When I was gonna export it to Embergen, the camera animation was not right. It didn't line up. And that's because you have to bake the camera animation and then apply all the constraints before you hit that bake button. Now, smoke and steam was not the only thing that I composited in. After the render, I wasn't really happy with the maggots. So what I did is, I found stock footage of worms or maggots just swarming around. And then I used images as planes to get the footage into Blender. And then I subdivided it, and then I used proportional editing to just give the plane some depth. And the material was very easy. I just added a little bump and then made it really glossy. That's all I did. Now, if you want to do this technique, I would recommend adding a little subsurface scattering to really get that gross, wormy look. And when I was done with that, I just did the holdout technique, and I used the head as the holdout this time. Stock elements was also used for this. When this leg falls on the ground, a little dust picks up as it hits the floor. Very, very subtle. And right here, there's a little dust as well. For the gunshot, I rendered out this Luma mat that I could use for the compositing. With that render pass, I can now put elements behind the gun. The muzzle flash was painted in Photoshop. I couldn't find a high quality photo of it, so I just painted it myself. And Emergen has a great particle system, so I actually used that for the blood splatter. And yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed that. Maybe you learned something, and let me know if there's anything else. Shoot me a comment. I'll read it. Alright, well, peace out. Adieu.